In this video, I'm going to show you how to smoke beef ribs in the new Oklahoma Joe's Bronco 2.0 drum smoker. Now, I haven't cleaned this since the last cook, so what I'm going to do is quickly go over the cooking grate with a steel wool brush. I'll hit it on both sides and then go over it with some paper towel. I'll go over the heat deflector as well. Then I'll empty the leftover briquettes in our charcoal basket into the ash pan below. Then I'll dispose of everything in our ash pan. Then I'll get it back in the smoker along with our charcoal basket. Then I'll fill our charcoal basket up with some briquettes, get a fire lighter in there, light it up, then I'll push our charcoal basket back in. So those briquettes are going to take around 10 to 15 minutes to catch light. So we'll use that time to prepare our beef ribs. As you can see, we've got some beautiful marbling in there. Now all we're going to do is take our beef ribs out of the packaging. And if you've seen my beef rib videos lately, you know I'm happy to leave that top fat on and the bottom membrane on too. But there is a little bit of excess fat on one end of these beef ribs and a little bit more underneath that I'll trim off. And now we're all trimmed up, I'm just going to season our beef ribs in our beef bounce rub, which will give us some really nice flavour and awesome bark. All right, and now our briquettes are burning nicely. We can shut our fire access door and our lid, then we'll open our vents right up, and now we'll bring our smoker up to just below our target temperature, which for this cook we want to be at around 275 Fahrenheit or 135 Celsius. All right, now we're up to temperature. We can open our lid, then I'll get a nice chunk of cherry wood straight on the fire and another one just off to the side. Then we'll get our heat deflector back in, followed by our cooking grate, and then we'll get our beef ribs on and close our lid. And after a few minutes, our temperature's recovered, so I'm just going to set our intake vent to around there. Then I'll see where our smoker stabilizes off at after 10 to 15 minutes, and if I need to increase temperature, I'll just open up a little bit, or if I need to decrease, I can just shut it down a little bit more. But for now, I'll leave it around there and we'll let our beef ribs smoke away. All right, and apart from a little bit of fire management, which is super easy in a drum, we can pretty much just let our beef ribs go the whole cook until they are probing tender around the 96 Celsius or 205 Fahrenheit internal mark. I like to let my beef ribs go for the whole cook unwrapped to get that really nice bark, and I'll only wrap them at the end once they're resting with a little bit of beef tallow. But I will check them every hour or two, and if they are looking a bit dry on top, I'll just spritz them with some water just to help keep them nice and moist. All right, so we're about 3 hours into this cook and we haven't had to spritz our beef ribs because there's been plenty of moisture on them throughout this cook so far. And as you can see, there still is plenty of moisture on them, so we are simply just going to let them continue to keep smoking away. Right, so I've been checking our beef ribs throughout this cook, and I reckon after almost 6.5 hours, surprisingly, these are ready. I thought they'd take a bit longer being such a thick rack of beef ribs, but as you can see, we're sitting at about 96, 97 degrees Celsius, or just over 205 Fahrenheit. And it's not all about temperature. You want to make sure they are probing nice and tender all over, which these ones certainly are. But before we take them out, I'm just going to get some Wagyu beef tallow in there to melt down, and we'll use that on top of our beef ribs when we wrap them up to rest them. All right, then after a few minutes, once your tallow's melted, we're going to get our beef ribs out. But first, I'll show you a trick for those who haven't seen it. I'm just going to get a gardening glove on and then a nitrile one over the top. And that way, I won't burn my hands when I go to pick up these beef ribs. How good do they look? So now I'm just going to get them on 2 layers of good quality foil, and we'll let them steam off for a few minutes just to stop that cooking process so they don't overcook. Then after a few minutes, we'll pour our beef tallow all over the ribs and wrap them up nice and tight. Now I'm just going to let them rest for a few hours before we come back to slice and serve them. Now when it comes to resting, you've got a few options. If you don't have a good quality esky or something like this, you can always rest whatever you're smoking, whether it be a big pork butt, a brisket, or some beef ribs, in your oven set to around 70 degrees Celsius. Honestly, with beef ribs, you can almost slice them up straight away and eat them. They are incredibly forgiving, but for now, we're going to let these beef ribs have a nice little rest. And after a few hours resting, we can get our beef ribs out to slice them up. Now these beef ribs look absolutely incredible. God, that's good. Now they are up there with some of the best beef ribs I've ever had. So there you have it. There's how to smoke beef ribs. A super forgiving cut, and one that's pretty easy to smoke as well. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss our next videos. But for now, that's the end of this video. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.